I overheard my wife tell her friends I was just a lazy, unemployed man living off her success. The sting of her words, mixed with their mocking laughter, hit me harder than I ever expected. Little did she know the life she was so proud of was about to change forever, and I was the one holding all the cards. For years, I poured my heart and soul into building my business from the ground up. The sleepless nights, the endless sacrifices, the constant stress, it all paid off. I had finally reached a point where I could sell the company for a life-changing amount of money and take a well-deserved break. I was looking forward to spending more time with my wife, maybe travel, and just enjoy the fruits of my labor. I thought she would be happy for us. But instead of support, I was met with disdain. My break, which was supposed to be a celebration of our success, became a source of her embarrassment. She started calling me her unemployed husband at social gatherings. At first, I thought it was a bad joke, something I could brush off. But it kept happening. The jokes became more frequent, the tone more condescending. She would introduce me to her friends with a pitying look, saying things like, "Oh, this is my husband, he's between things right now." Her friends, who all worked at the same prestigious marketing firm, would offer me fake sympathy while exchanging smug glances. The public humiliation was a slow, painful burn. I tried talking to her about it, explaining how much her words hurt me. She would just roll her eyes and say I was being too sensitive. "It's just a joke," she'd claim. "If you don't like it, maybe you should get a job." A job? I had just spent a decade building an empire. But in her eyes, my rest period was a sign of failure. The person I loved most was looking at me with contempt. That's when I realized our relationship had fractured in a way I hadn't seen. Her respect for me wasn't based on who I was as a person, but on my professional status and income. One evening, she came home particularly excited. She announced she was hosting a dinner party for her friends from work. "It's a big deal," she said. "My boss might even be there. So please try to look presentable and don't say anything embarrassing." The night of the party, our home was filled with the chatter and laughter of her colleagues. I did my best to be a gracious host, but the condescending remarks started almost immediately. One of her friends asked me in a sickly sweet voice, "So, what is it you do all day?" "It must be nice having so much free time." Before I could even answer, my wife chimed in, "Oh, he's an expert in daytime television and napping." The room erupted in laughter. I stood there, frozen, feeling my face burn with a mixture of anger and shame. My wife, the woman I promised to love and cherish, was leading a chorus of mockery at my expense in our own home. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. If you enjoy emotional and dramatic revenge stories, please subscribe for more. The evening wore on, and the jabs kept coming. They joked about setting me up with entry-level interviews, offering me helpful resume tips. I stayed silent, letting their arrogance fill the room. That night, something inside me shifted. The pain turned into a cold, hard resolve. She wanted me to have a job. Fine, I would get one. The next morning, while she was at work, I started making some calls. I still had my connections and a significant amount of capital from selling my business. I started researching her company, the marketing firm she was so proud of. I discovered it was a publicly traded company that had been underperforming recently. Its stock was low, and there were whispers of a potential buyout. An idea, a bold and audacious one, began to form in my mind. I didn't just want a job. I wanted to send a message. I spent the next few weeks quietly and meticulously executing my plan. Through a series of shell corporations and private brokers, I began buying up a controlling stake in her company. It was a high-risk, high-reward move, but I was determined. My wife remained completely oblivious. She was too busy complaining about my lack of ambition to notice the long hours I was suddenly spending in my home office, buried in financial reports and legal documents. She just assumed I was finally looking for a menial job to satisfy her. One day, I found a memo on our kitchen counter. It was an announcement for an all-hands emergency meeting at her company. The memo was vague, mentioning a major corporate restructuring. My wife was anxious. "I hope there are no layoffs," she said nervously. "My friends and I are all worried." I simply nodded, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "I'm sure it will be fine," I said. The day of the meeting, she left for work, dressed in her most professional attire. A few hours later, I followed. I walked into the very same corporate building, not as a visitor, but as the new majority shareholder. I took the elevator to the top floor where the boardroom was located. When I entered, the entire executive team, including my wife's boss, stood up in surprise. I introduced myself, and the color drained from their faces as my identity and my position were confirmed by the corporate lawyers present. The meeting I was about to lead wasn't just for the executives. I had requested that all employees, including my wife and her team, join via a company-wide video conference. Down on her floor, my wife and her friends were gathered in a conference room, watching the screen, waiting for the news. I saw them on the monitor, whispering and gossiping likely about who was about to get fired. I stepped up to the podium and looked directly into the camera. My face appeared on screens throughout the building. I could see the shock ripple through the conference room where my wife was sitting. Her jaw dropped. Her friends stared at the screen in disbelief. The man they had been mocking for weeks, the unemployed husband, was now standing before them as their new boss. The room fell silent. I began to speak, my voice calm and steady. I outlined the company's recent failures, its missed targets, and its toxic internal culture. I explained that a full-scale restructuring was not just necessary, but essential for survival. This process will be difficult, I said. But it is required to build a stronger, more respectful, and more profitable future for this company. Then I moved on to the departmental review. I announced that an internal audit had uncovered significant issues within the marketing department specifically, a pattern of unprofessional conduct, harassment of colleagues, and a documented misuse of company time and resources. As I spoke, I presented evidence, email chains, chat logs, and sworn statements from other employees who had been targets of their ridicule. It painted a clear picture of a toxic environment fostered by my wife and her clique. They hadn't just been unprofessional with me at home. They had been bullies at work. Their positions, I announced, were being eliminated as part of the restructuring, effective immediately. The feed from their conference room showed pure chaos. My wife stared at the screen, her face a mask of horror and disbelief. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Her career, her status, and the very foundation of her pride had crumbled in an instant, and it was by my hand. I ended the meeting and returned home. A few hours later, she walked through the door, a completely defeated person. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow look in her eyes. She looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time in months. The man she had humiliated was the one who held all the power. The silence was deafening. She tried to apologize, to explain, but the words felt empty. The damage was done. The mockery and disrespect had shattered the last remnants of our relationship. I didn't do it out of pure revenge. I did it to protect my own dignity and to build something better. She had shown me her true colors, and I simply chose to believe her. Sometimes, the most powerful statement you can make is to quietly take back your power and walk away. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more Reddit-style revenge stories.